Hello folks, Min-Max Munchkin back with an update video for the Ultimate Smiter. I just came back home from a D&D session, so my voice probably sounds a bit busted, but I feel pumped and ready, so I decided to hit record and just make it happen regardless. Now, after one of my Patreon supporters, a shout out to Matthew Ewing, playtested Agatha himself, and I also played multiple Paladin-based characters since the first video, I rearranged the Paladin, Sorcerer, and Warlock levels to improve her defenses and just overall staying power while still maintaining a very high damage potential. Variant Human remains the most optimal overall racial choice, at least until we get more flexibility in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. You can play this character as a half-elf for that Elven accuracy feat combined with Vengeance Paladin's Vow of Enmity for some sick critical hit chances, but I ultimately opted for a more conservative approach with the Conquest Paladin and an extra feat. I went full min-max with the point buy this time around with a typical 15 points in Constitution rounding up to 16 with the Resilient feat right away at first level. Background remains the same too, Mercenary Veteran, which I chose primarily for the skill proficiencies, though you can mix and match this to your own liking. At the mechanical core of this character, as the title suggests, is her very high melee damage potential as she smites enemies into oblivion, just like you should scroll down below and smite the hell out of that like button before the YouTube algorithm kills this video and this channel. Don't forget about the other two minions, the subscribe and bell notification buttons. Their hit points are just low enough for some well-timed level 2 critical smites as well. However, in order to be able to unload all of this damage, she needs some staying power. That's why I decided to cut back on Hexblade Warlock levels and give her 4 more Paladin levels, because that Aura of Protection feature is just too good not to have. Now, compared to just 2 Paladin levels Agatha had before, now you get to choose the Paladin subclass at level 3. I was really torn between Vengeance and Conquest, as I said before. I legit spent weeks and months mentally running away from having to pick one over another. Ultimately, I settled for Conquest, as it does open up a more conservative playstyle approach for games where managing all of your resources is just as important as dumping hundreds of points of damage into some poor demon lord. Conquest subclass, it gives you a free hold person spell, which paralyzes humanoid enemies and turns all of your ordinary hits into critical hits as a result. This roughly doubles the damage of all of your smites and allows the rest of the party to double their damage on their attacks as well. On a resource management end, Spiritual Weapon spell opens up a more conservative combat approach that, based on my experience, lends itself better to a broader range of games, tables, DM styles, and just all sorts of campaigns out there. Guided Strike Channel Divinity can turn a bad roll into a good one, which is often what D&D combat boils down to. 1 or 2 well-timed hits that kill the enemy and turn the tide of combat in your favor. Level 5 Paladin gives you a standard extra attack feature and extra mobility via Find Steed spell. Level 6 Paladin is when you get that fabled Aura of Protection, which is the main reason I ditched Warlock levels. The Aura improves your own and your party's survivability immensely, especially at higher levels where saving throws become at least as important as armor class. On a Shadow Sorcerer side, Eyes of the Dark and Strength of the Grave features, as well as Shield and Absorb Element spells, are still a strong reason to dip into Sorcerer as soon as possible for improved vision and survivability. Core class Font of the Magic feature remains a key component too. Those sorcery points can be used conventionally on Quickened and Twin Mana Magics, or combined with Warlock's short rest spell slots to create a few extra spell slots before and after short rests during each and every adventuring day. Hound of Ill Omen ties into the overall approach this character goes for, as both Hold Person and Hold Monster spells require enemies to make wisdom saving throws. Slapping disadvantage against all of those saves improves the odds of them failing, and you and your allies being able to pummel the enemies with absolute impunity. Legendary resistance trait many higher challenge rating bosses or just monsters have can and will stall this extra damage. However, at least they will be forced to spend it, which allows other party members to have an easier time using their spells and features that force enemies to roll saving throws as well. Finally, at Sorcerer level 9 you can learn 5th level spells, so that Hold Monster turns all of your and your party mates' ordinary hits into critical hits via Paralyzed Condition. Cutting Hexblade's levels down from 9 to 5 still leaves you with Pact Magic and 3rd level Warlock spell slots, which, as stated above, can be funneled into even more spell slots via via Font of Magic feature and short rests. You still get Hex Warrior, which allows you to focus solely on improving your charisma score for pretty much everything this character does, Hexblade's Curse for better critical hit chances and a bit of extra damage against weaker enemies. Pact of the Blade Boon is still the only sensible choice at level 3 because it enables the improved Pact Weapon invocation, and once you hit Warlock level 5, Eldritch Smite on top as a double whammy super smite damage against the most dangerous enemies. Eldritch Blast cantrip is there as the best overall option for situations where you can't or maybe even don't want to get in melee, which is why the tried and tested Agonizing Blast Eldritch invocation makes sense to wrap things up. Now, Maddening Hex instead of Agonizing Blast could be a viable alternative if you like flat damage bonuses on your melee weapon attacks as well, though action economy constraints from spell and feature dependencies of that invocation and just the general meta this character relies on don't make it that appealing in my own opinion. Obviously, all these class levels give you a total of 4 ability score improvements, 1 from Paladin, 2 from Sorcerer, and 1 from Warlock. I really think this character needs Warcaster feat added to the mix. You have a lot of concentration spells, your hands are always busy, and you're usually better off casting Booming Blade instead of making a base opportunity attack. Now, instead of Dual Wielder feat, which I recommended back in the first iteration of this character, Sentinel feat really makes more sense to me nowadays. That reaction attack gets triggered a whole lot of time during actual play, and with your smiting potential, it adds up to the overall damage quite a lot. It's ultimately your choice, a bit higher armor class and weapon damage die, or a potentially devastating reaction attack that makes a critical hit that just obliterates the enemy before it even gets to finish its multi-attack. To avoid another half an hour or even longer video, I won't go too deep into each and every spell choice, so here's a list I'd consider for this character. Notable change is the inclusion of Counterspell, which I simply have no idea why I haven't recommended back in the first video. It's simply a must because most DMs, me included, often resort to just dumping a bunch of high-level spells against higher-level parties, so it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. If you're one of the few lucky ones who gets to pick and choose which items the character will have, Staff of Power stands out head and shoulders above the rest if you ask me. This all-purpose item significantly improves both your martial and magical capabilities, both offensively and defensively. Holy Avenger on the other end isn't the best thematic fit, but it provides a solid power bump. However, it's even more rare than Staff of Power, so good luck getting it in the first place. Wand of Binding and Wand of Paralysis both serve the similar purpose of conserving your spell slots and paralyzing enemies, while the armor class and saving throw improvements via Cloak or Ring of Protection or just some ordinary +1 or higher plate armor, all of these are no-brainers for even better survivability and your staying power. Now, remember how I mentioned you can have even more spell slots than you get by default? Here's a theoretical breakdown of how Font of Magic and Warlock's short rest spell slots can produce more overall spell slots you have access to with just one short rest during the adventuring day. I prefer a bunch of extra lower level spell slots instead of a few higher ones, but you can do as you wish. Due to lower Warlock spell slot levels, your individual critical hits involving both Divine and Eldritch Smites won't be as massive as they were in the first iteration of this character, but assuming you do manage to paralyze the enemy with hold person or monster spells, or just some of the other items, you will still hover around 200 damage per round. Even if the enemy can't be paralyzed for whatever reason, this character still knows Shadow Blade and, similar to a few of my other characters on this channel, can output around 150 damage in a round that way as well. And this flexibility provided by the combination of spells and features of the Paladin, Warlock and Sorcerer classes provides several progression paths the way I see it. If you want to just get both Smite features, Divine and Eldritch Smite, as soon as possible, here's the level by level breakdown that would enable that, but if you like a more spellbound approach, getting to that 9th level Sorcerer for Hold Monster is a viable path too. In both instances, I'm strongly convinced dipping 1 level into Sorcerer at character level 2 and then finishing the remaining 5 levels of Paladin after that is the best approach, because the superior Dark Vision and extra survivability of Shadow Sorcerer's first level paired with Booming Blade and and Green Flame Blade cantrips will compensate for that 1 level delay of extra attack, while still allowing you to get Aura of Protection at a reasonably low level. Roleplay wise, I would lean onto the mercenary background as it meshes well with the concept of a character willing to serve two masters, a divine paladin entity and a warlock patron in her quest for more power. Agatha's alignment is somewhere in the lawful or just true neutral spectrum. I don't see her as particularly good or evil, but chaotic bent doesn't suit the rigid paladin and warlock requirements either. While her hardline conquest paladin conviction may nudge the party's decision making more to the side of merciless murder hoboing instead of promoting the hippie ideas of love and peace in the universe filled with horrible monsters, her exposure to the morally grey mercenary lifestyle allows her to see things that are anything but black and white, so she would be reasonably willing to compromise depending on various circumstances. As you can see me scrolling through it on the screen, I updated the old Word file with new information, went a bit more into detail about some things, and did my best to clarify potentially confusing or contradicting information. If you would like to download this file, head on over to my Patreon page and pledge into the Magical Secrets tier. It's not mandatory, it's 100% optional, especially in these troubled, globally challenging economic times, but if you find the Patreon perks worth the trouble, worth your time and worth your money, consider supporting my efforts there. I also made a level 20 version of this character on D&D Beyond, link is down in the description as always. Special shout out to all of my current patrons: Mike, Matthew, Ewing, BardlyManHardlyTrying, Rogor, Kaleron, SuburbanHell, Cory Clausen, Gary Kors, Brad Oldham, C Alcazar, Sean, Mannozzi Stefano, Adekoya, CrackedMask, Keilan, Udel 18, Russ Helms, Francisco Martinez, Alexandre Audet, PrimalBassBoost, Ted Reighard, Stephen Keezer, BarbandVern IsPosting, Devon Troeger, Sean Walker, James Randolph, Wesley Shick, Edge Walker, Kyler Beverly, N7 Frosthawk, Jacob Netter, Alex Bell, Harry Howell, Jacob Salters, Wicked Redstone, Char B, Burley Bjorn, Christopher Pistachio, Super Neil, AB Codes, Neko, Hector Monterey, Alec Greenwood, John Gamma, Jamie Harris, Todd Sterling Garza, James Garlic, Tooth and Nail Rules, Creepy Chunky Guy, Nathaniel Besancini, Anthony Verdoni, Maximus S, Meher Cute, Georgios Kritsatakis, Harley Long, Ira Quinn, Alex Duran, Elvis Yank, Play Puma, John Bush, Dynamite Studios, Justin Blankenship, Horse the Seller, Malavtros, The Chad, Brian Wolf, Orin Clark, Kalugaro, David Windsor, Riven, Tint White, Kazoko, Tim Turbeville, Anthony Guntert, Mad Mike, Sean Jarrett, Joshua Ferreira, Kelly Bolduc, William Yori, Daniel Beamish, Paul Herzik, Taylor Cook, Josh Summerfield, Kevin Badgett, Daniel Brown, Aldo Abraham, Dan M, Jeff Manglin, Gabriel Lopez, Chris DeLeon, Sean Comrie, Daniel Contier, MJL, Marcus Dixon, Brian White, Ryan Rosknecht, Hulkle, Richard M. Odegaard, RJ Davidson, John Finnegan, Chris Gonzalez, Adam Alexander, Potter, Wayne, Marcus Lucy, Cocktastic, OV13, Cody Thorne, Adam Holbrook, The Armada, Jeff Tucker, Robert Bonilla, Jim. Thank you for your continued support. Sorry for butchering half your names. If I missed somebody, I sincerely apologize. You people have been arriving and departing like crazy lately, but either way, I'll make sure you get many more videos like this in the following weeks and months. With everything said and done, MinMax Munchking out. Talk to you soon.